Hello, friends. Today I feel extremely honored and privileged. I have a very illustrious, a very respected, a very senior personality with us, and not just from the forces, but from my school, who is my super, no, I'll not say super, I'll say super duper senior from my school. From my alma mater, Lawrence School, Lovedale, the tie of the school, the old school tie that I'm wearing, the school blazer, the school shirt, and I'm glad it's still fitting me. Well, let me tell you a bit, though, of course, Group Captain Madhavan Khashav needs no introduction, especially in the old Lawrencian community. But still, let me tell you my experience when I met Sir during Founders in September last year, 2022. Sir was visiting school after, I presume, over 7 decades, in fact. And after he passed out, that was the first time he visited Lawrence School, Lovedale, after passing out. And he joined school in 1948 when the school was still under the British rule. And so he has seen the transition. He's seen the time when it was part or under the Britishers and then when it became part of the independent India. He's seen that as well. He served in the Indian Air Force. His father was in the forces. He was a Major Shah from the Royal Engineers. He has continued the tradition of serving in the forces. And let's straight away go across to Group Captain Khashav sir. Sir, Jai Hind sir, and thank you very much for taking your time, sir.
Jai Hind, sir.
Sir, so tell me about the time when you went to Lawrence School, Lovedale, sir, first, and your first day in school. But before you talk about your first day in school, how did you decide upon going to Lawrence School, Lovedale?
Thank you, Ali. And here's a bit of my story. Uh, I was born and brought up in Hyderabad, and I was going to a school called Grammar School on the Abbott Road in Hyderabad. My dad was in the British Army in the Royal Engineers, and he worked during the Second World War at Kohima at the borders to build roads, being an engineer. After handing over of the independence to us, 1947, he was inducted back into the Indian Army as a Indian Engineers. He was posted to Secunderabad. Of course, you know about the Nizam not wanting to hand over the state to the Indian government, and therefore ensued thereafter with a police action. But just before the police action, Nizam had hired a lot of missionaries, a lot of uh, uh, troops from the Saudi Arabia called Razakas. And they were all planning to, of course, massacre as many as possible connected with the Indian government services. And my dad was one of them. When he got wind of it, we were taken away from Hyderabad to my uncle's place in Guntur, who was the SP of Guntur Police. From there, we enjoyed ourselves very well for 6 months, no studies. Naturally, at that age, it was great fun. And then, after the police action, he came over, picked us up, and went straight over to Lawrence School, Lovedale. We were anticipating to see a nice school, and it didn't let us down. It was a fabulous looking school with that majestic tower and that red stoned building, brick in bricks, and the blue sky behind. It was fantastic, fabulous, momentous, something which I can never forget ever. So it was accidentally or coincidentally, whatever it is, that we landed up in Lovedale. Never dreamt what Lovedale looked like, Lawrence School, Lovedale. It was then under the British. And the first principal, of course, was Mr. Richardson. And I met him in school, and he got along very fine with my dad, both being in the British Army as Royal Engineer. And thereafter, we were there in school during the British time. The school was still held by the British and not handed over to India, even though in 1947 we got the independence. In 6th of September 1949, the school was handed over to the Indian government, and Mr. Lakhani was the first principal whom I met. And I could see things changing, and suddenly one fine day, I found that most of the teachers were all British or from Australia or Ireland, etc. They all left, and we had no teachers in the school. I was at that time in the seventh standard, and no teachers to teach us, and naturally, we all failed. Uh, well, never given is our motto, so we just carried on. A little later, my dad arrived and asked me why these kind of results have been obtained by me, which I did explain what the reason for the all the teachers having left and no one to teach us. One Mr. Subramaniam used to come from KT school. Other one, Mrs. Medha, would come and teach us once in English. Certainly, we're not that uh, clever to be able to appear for a junior Cambridge examination. So the results were very obvious. I also took part in the parade where the color, that means the Indian Union, uh, uh, the Indian flag triangle was handed over to the school to replace the British flag. And it was a momentous occasion, and the, it gave us a sense of pride that we've got the school back and handed over to India at last. That was in 1949, or I beg your pardon, 1948. I was present there, and this time when I visited last year, when I visited Lawrence School, Lovedale, it was precisely after 73 years. I met up a lot of people, including Ali, and it was absolutely nostalgic. And I was looking at every bit of the building, the changes that have taken place, and it looked exactly the same. And smart students loafing around all over a public school, finest of its kind in India. And that is how I can remember Lovedale as.
So we go back to school after years or probably after a decade, and we can imagine the kind of feeling that we get. So we can well imagine the feeling. It's giving me goosebumps. Somebody visiting back to school after 73 years. My goodness, it must have been extremely, extremely special. And sir, if I'm not mistaken, you drove down from Bangalore to Lovedale all alone. Am I right, sir?
No, no, I got a driver to help out.
So
You
you,
see?
so a driver helped you out. So you, but you came by road all by yourself, alone with the driver, sir, from Bangalore.
Yes. No, there's a couple of Lawrencians who wanted a ride, and I gave them.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's lovely, sir. That's lovely. That's lovely. That's lovely. So when we met in school, ladies and gentlemen, I saw a very spirited young man, I would say, who smiled, who I smile, and our eyes exchange glances. We smile at each other, and straight away, and that is the connection of Lawrence School. And straight away, I introduced myself, and Sir introduced himself. And when Sir started telling his stories that he had joined when the school was in the British under the British rule and such things, and the transition that took place, it was so intriguing. We could have just sat down and spent the entire day with Sir. Amazing stories. I was so intrigued by Sir since then, and I have been in touch with Sir. So tell me the main changes you saw from the kind of course, apart from the structural change, the academics, the curriculum, what about the parade, the games? Because we have everything structured in all boarding schools. Just a couple of days back, 2 days back, I went for the Sindhya School alumni meeting where I was the guest speaker, and I told them all I was wearing the same tie, by the way. I told them that I am from Lawrence School Lovely, and they were all very much in awe of me and the way and the camaraderie. of boarding schools. I mean, you don't have to be from Lovedale or from some other school. You can, but the moment you hear from a boarding school, you straight away hug each other. So the connection we established was great. Would like to hear the changes you saw, sir.
Well, for one thing, the whole school was very well maintained. I congratulated the principal for having maintained the school in a spick and span manner. You see, I went through was the dormitories, and there were some changes, and of course, my memories of the old days when I was in Hope dormitory, and uh, and the changes that took place there. There are a lot more classes out there, and I think the prep school was transferred to the main building where existed at that time was the tuck shop and the shooting range, where Mr. Major Nichols and Mr. Prince they used to have their houses out there. And apart from this, of course, see to meet any Lawrencian was a little nostalgic to be able to meet the people who went through the same channels as I did. Because that when you're young, when you remember, is all that you remember is your school, and it is very vivid in your mind. And how can you ever forget? You see, I still remember the days when it was very cold in the mornings, the PT, the parade conduct taught by Major Nichols, a famous figure in the school who looked after the school after the British left. There was no one in the school to teach us or curriculum, but he managed the school very, very well indeed. And in my final year, senior Cambridge, my dad had to transfer me to St. Joseph's College to be able to pass the senior Cambridge. As there were no teachers in Lovedale. That is an era when it was the school was going through some problems of whether to continue or not, I believe. But Indian government stood fast and took over the school and has been running. You can see the state of it right now. Super.
So that's St. Joseph's Katy you went to after Lovedale.
No, no, I went to St. Joseph's College in Kuno.
Kunur. Okay, sir.
All
Sir,
the Irish brothers who made sure that I learnt the Shakespeare too well to be answer all questions in the senior Cambridge. You see,
oh, lovely,
that's
sir,
why I
lovely.
hated Shakespeare for his language and literature. And I even told someone, why couldn't he speak proper English? You see. You see. So,
Sir, I
yeah.
would stammer and stutter in my young before I became a teenager. In fact, so slightly before I joined Lawrence, and then my speech impediment continued for a while until I got rid of it. In fact, it got rid of it. I got rid of it by learning Shakespeare, incidentally. So that's why I've been in love with
I
Shakespeare.
see.
And I've read all his plays. I know his some of his plays by heart, not the speeches, the plays. And in fact, incidentally, I did a film with Vishal Bhardwaj, who's a Hindi filmmaker who specializes in adaptation of William Shakespeare's plays into films. So I did this film called Heather, the adaptation of Hamlet, and we won 5 national awards for that film. Sir, if you permit me,
And
sir, if you permit me, I would like to just give a. I mean, the play would be too long, but just what because it's very nostalgic about when mentioning about William Shakespeare. If I could just speak a few lines, if you permit, sir.
yes, please.
So first, William Shakespeare wrote that all the world the stage, like we are all acting. So all the world the stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have the exits and the entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in another's arms, and then the whining schoolboy with a satchel, with a shining morning face, unwilling to school, creeping like snail, and then the lover, shine like furnace. So it's amazing. Then the ABL soldier, and then the 7 stages basically. So it's an amazing poem. And then there's another one. This from As You Like It. This one, the 7 stages of a man. And then there is Shylock's speech, very famous from Merchant of Venice. He hath hindered me and disgraced me, 500,000, laughed at my losses, mocked at my gains, scorned my nation, thought in my bargains, and what's the reason? I am a Jew, hath on a Jew eyes, organs, dimensions, sense, affection, passion. fed with the same food, hurt by the same weapon. If you tickle us, do not laugh. If you prick us, do not bleed. If you harm us, do not revenge. So it's something nostalgia. And of course, the Mark Antony speech from Julius Caesar. I can't, I'll stop here, sir. But I got carried away. I'm so sorry about this. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft entered. The good is oft entered with the bones. So let be with Caesar. The noble Brutus had told you Caesar was ambitious. If it was so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously had Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men. Come out and speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and sure, he is an honorable man. It's something nostalgia. And that's one more quote where he wrote, cowards die many times before the death. The valiant never face death but once. So it's something. It's so close to my heart actually. Anyways, I'm so sorry. I got a bit carried away with William Shakespeare's name.
Sure. Excellent and fantastic that you remember all these plays and able to even bring it out at this age and time. Fantastic. All that I remember is a pound of flesh, which increased my enthusiasm to find out what is this pound of flesh you see in Pursuit of
When
Venice.
fish with
That's
all.
about all. Yeah.
That's right.
But it's great
When
literature.
Shylock asked Antonio, when Antonio asked Shylock for a pound of flesh, and he ran off with Portial. That's the time.
Yes.
So superb, sir. And you joined in school in which class, sir, if I may ask?
Well, I was studying in Hyderabad in St. George's Grammar School, and I was in sixth standard and then promoted to seventh. So when I went to the school, I was in the junior Cambridge and in the seventh standard. Those days we had only up to ninth standard. Ninth standard was a senior Cambridge, you see. And I straight away went into senior Cambridge, and there was no Indian boys at all. And yes, a lot of Anglo Indians in the whole school. And we were precisely, I think, about seven Indian kids studying in the school at that time. And all had your supported by a defense background, you see. And only after handing over did it become a public school and open to all the civilians. Otherwise, all the kids during the British time were all from the British Army. It was only meant for British troops and officers, that's it. No one else, you see. And
Sir.
the first batch, I remember a lot of them, and from elite families like Gorpade from Satara districts, then Varmas from Kerala, etc., K.N. Singh from Madhya Pradesh, royal families or whatever, you see. And they were the first batch who came into the school after handing over, and Mr. Lakhani having taken over. One thing about Mr. Lakhani is when he took over, it's the first time that I learnt about Tagore. And Gitanjali used to be propagated by him in his house over a cup of tea. And I still remember some of the lines
The network seems to be bad, sir, at your end. But till the time the network comes back, you mentioned about Rabindranath Tagore's Gitanjali. Yeah, he wrote, where the mind is mind without fear and the head is held high, where the knowledge is free, when the world has not been fragmented into narrow domestic walls, uh, where where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been fragmented into narrow domestic walls, where I remember this very clearly. I mean, not very clearly now, but I remember learning all this in school. But while the time sir's videos pause, let me fill this gap over here by telling you all, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends, that what an honor it is for me speaking to a super senior. Perhaps, I am not too sure, but perhaps seems like one of the oldest old Lawrencians right now. And I think sir has got disconnected. He's gone out of. But anyway, I will try calling up sir. But uh, so there is a comment which has come by a very an online friend of mine. Vatsal 007. Major Shah is sir from 1971 war. Yes, sir is from 1971 war. In fact, much before that also, it's 1965, 62, and before that as well. So sir is very, very senior, very, very senior. Okay, Vatsal, thank you. Okay, yes, sir's back, I think. Great. I think sir, sir, sorry, sir, you got disconnected. Now you're back, sir.
Yeah, I'm back again.
Sir, sir.
Well, this time when I went to Lovedale, uh, I was given a little privilege. The principal took me to the assembly hall, introduced me to the kids who were present at the assembly hall, and that left me in a position where I was the lord's schoolboy from the school. And all of them, most of them came around for the next 2 days talking to me, talking about the Air Force and things like that. I wanted to talk to them as to how to join the Air Force and the defense forces, which is, uh, but the time was too short and could not really convey the information to them. But I'm on a wanting to start a workshop there whereby the kids will come to know much more about the defense services and the lovely time I had in the Indian Air Force throughout my career till I took a premature release from the Indian Air Force in 1982. And I did my civil license and went off for wealthier pastures to Malaysia as a principal of the Malaysian Flying Academy. You see? And I need to say right now that the young kids there have not been exposed to different lifestyles that you get in the open arena. They're only confined to the syllabus of passing an examination. It is important, therefore, for all the veterans and all the Lawrencians to be able to help the school in trying to expose the different job opportunities so that the school is trained to fill in these different posts: IPS, IAS, IRS, Indian Forest Service, Foreign Services, Defense Forces, etc. They're very good, very interesting, very challenging, where patriotic uh, thing evolved from it. And it is important that we form a workshop to inculcate these things.
Sir.
Yes, Ali.
Sir, so totally, how many years did you spend at Lovedale, sir?
Ali.
Sir, can you hear me, sir? So, how many years did you
Well,
spend
Ali, let
studying?
me, since in the during the conversation, I was in the Indian Air Force once. I
So,
spent precisely two years,
sir, sir,
two
sir,
years,
sir,
and out of
after,
the 2 years, 1 year was no studies at all
right,
because all
sir,
the teachers left the school.
sir,
No one to teach us. We were free to loaf around and under the scrutiny and eyes of the Major Nichols, who used to see that we followed the discipline all throughout. You see?
sir. Incidentally, even my father's from St. Joseph's, but in Nainital, where they also had Irish brothers, and the commitment of Irish brothers is really, I mean, it's really hats off to them. So, tell me, after Lovedale, you went to St. Joseph's, where the Irish brothers were very strict, of course, and thereafter you went joined the Air Force. So, when you went for your training, did your grounding at Lawrence, your education at Lawrence School, Lovedale, help you in Forge? Because it's the same drill almost. It was a military school, same parade, same rifle drills, PT, physical fitness, and the same, almost a similar routine.
Yes, it did tremendously. You see, the drill gives you that discipline, the self reliance. You see, you to obey orders at the same time disciplined in every manner. You see? Then came the training throughout, where you're made to live for yourself and survive. That survival of the fitness is an attribute which you get while you're in Lovedale because of the comradeship of the other kids, and you're not allowed to sneak about anything that happens, whether you have a fight with someone or not. The problem is yours to solve. And we were very disciplined, punctual. These attributes were tremendous. And that is why, out of when I appeared for the United UPSC examination in 1951, I noticed that at least about 2,000 students appearing for the examination only in Madras. But can you imagine the number of students appearing for the UPSC examinations all over India? Delhi, Calcutta, Bombay, so on and so forth. Thousands maybe. And the vacancies available for the Indian Air Force, just 15. 15 for the Navy and 180 for the Army. So out of the whole of India, with all the challenges that before us, as a youngster, to be able to go through all the tests, practicals, interviews, the physical fitnesses, everything. I shined and got into the first 15. That is phenomenal. And I attribute that to the training I received from Lovedale. You see, that is where Lovedale training comes into being. You're self confident at all times.
Absolutely, sir. So you mentioned about
Yeah,
sneaking in school that you weren't allowed to sneak. During our time, the terminology the term was ditching. Hey, don't ditch. So I don't know if you would remember the terminology and the jargon during your time, sir. Was this term used at your time as well, sir? Don't ditch means don't sneak. Can you hear me, sir? Hello?
ex-
Yeah.
exactly. There's nothing. Yes, I can hear you. Exactly the same. We cannot complain ever. And the
Huh.
prefects used to look after the entire school under Major Nichols and absolutely disciplined in all respects. Food was very good at Lovedale, mostly Western cuisine, you see, and everything went round like a clockwork under Major Nichols, even though there were no teachers at all, till I think later on it got set when Kit Thomas came in to take over. I left when Kit Thomas came into the school at that year, that same year. I left. I remember taking out my school leaving certificate and joining St. Joseph's College. The Padris, very strict. Most of the time I was standing on the bench because I couldn't recite Shakespeare verbatim, and that's how they managed to make me pass my senior Cambridge, at least. After that, I went over to Madras, joined the college to become a doctor. So when I got the UPSC examination uh, advertisement, I went through it. Incidentally, no one helped me. No one helped me as to how to get into the Air Force. So I was staying in Wellington with my mom. Dad was in Secunderabad. So I went over to Staff College, and there in the library, I found a book called Competition, UPSC. And there I could find out the sample question papers. And there were mathematical questions which I couldn't answer. So I told my mom, I'm going for a tuition, went over to the upper corner, the other side, took some tuitions, how to solve these questions, and there you are. I came out smiling out of 2,000 kids in Madras and so many other kids to be selected for the UPSC examination.
There seems to be a network glitch over there, ladies and gentlemen, but so interesting. I was speaking. I wanted to cover Sir's got a Vishi Seva Medal, highly decorated, and an amazing career in the Indian Air Force as a very gallant soldier, I would say, in the army, in the Air Force. And pardon me when I say army, it comes out, muh se nikalta hai because I've been an army officer, son of an army officer. So I mean the Indian Defense Forces per se. So I think there is a bad network, so I think we'll end over here. But uh, I will bring Sir once again. Part two. We will discuss about Sir's Air Force career and about the times when he has fought for the country. He has brought laurels for the country. He has put his life at stake on several occasions, safeguarding our country. A true hero in the true sense, and one of the oldest old Lawrencians on this planet today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please do share it, especially my Lawrencian community. I love you all, and whatever I am today, I owe it all to Lawrence School, Lovedale. Take care. Oh, Sir's back. Sir's back.
Yeah. We got cut off
Yeah.
again.
So
You see?
sorry. I was just
And
filling the gap while you were away. So
I see.
I
Wonderful. Well, in the Indian Air Force, I want to tell you, yeah. Can I continue? Yeah.
yes, sir, please,
In
please,
the
please
Indian Air
continue.
Force, I had a lovely time flying the Hunter aircraft, MiG 21s, went into war as a flight commander 1971 into East Pakistan, supported our troops as I would say a lot had been done by us from the Indian Air Force to be achieve the ceasefire and the surrender of the East Pakistan to the Indian forces. Had it not been for the Air Force to support, we couldn't have moved forward because there are big rivers and a lot of saturation of the East Pakistan troops all over and marshy and they found it very difficult to move forward in East Pakistan. And they'd call up for help, and we would solve the problems. You see. Anyway, I was awarded with mention and dispatch for gallantry in the 71 war. And thereafter, in 1982, I called it a day and went off to Malaysia to become the principal general manager of Malaysian Flying Academy for 22 years, training pilots for Malaysian Airlines, AirAsia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thaiway Airways, Japan, JAL, and Singapore Airlines. And it's a massive academy. And since I've come back now, it is my
So I'm sure that since Sir left on the note that since I have come back now and Sir will come back soon again, this network glitch will be resolved. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, a personality who has contributed to the nation, who's contributed to the aviation sector, Hunter aircraft were those aircraft, ladies and gentlemen, in 1971 war, in which my father also participated from Longewala. There's a film called Border, which was made by J.P. Datta and Major Kuldeep Singh Chandpuri, later on Brigadier Kuldeep Singh Chandpuri, Mahavir Chakra, who passed away recently. Hunter aircrafts they were very good aircrafts, but they had a handicap of not being able to fly at night. So when in the darkness they couldn't fly. So when there was a company of Punjab regiment at the border, that's the time 120 men needed urgent support, and Air Force could not come at night, but in the morning they came and they the first light of day, first light, the very first light, and we had the Hunter aircraft creating havoc for the enemy troops, for the enemy tanks there, sirs back. So that hello, sir. So sorry. I was telling them about how in 1971, sir, in 1971, how Hunter aircraft had the handicap of not flying at night, but then in the morning, the first light of day, they came and they created havoc for the enemy tanks and they destroyed them all. And yes, it was a and it proved that any war is a tandem. You work in tandem together. These were an Air Force victory, an Army victory. Together, we fought and we won the war. So you also fly MiGs, the MiG 21 Bison, which is supposed to be a vintage aircraft. And in fact, incidentally, sir, now a group captain, that time Wing Commander Abhinandan Vartaman, in 19 on 27th February 2019, when he crash landed into Pakistan, he was flying a MiG 21 Bison aircraft. So, what are your views, or what was your experience while flying the MiG, sir?
Well, the MiG 21, the FL, which is an interceptor aircraft, I flew it in uh, because I was required to take over a MiG squadron as a squadron commander. But before that, they posted me back to Hunters because I was an A category instructor and they were wanting to convert 14 to a training squadron, where a large number of pilots, after their graduation to a pilot flying officer, they would come down to Kalaikonda and do some training under me on the Hunter aircraft before they left for faster aircraft like the MiG 21. MiG 21 is a very fast aircraft, flies at 2.5 Mach at altitude, which is 2.5 times the speed of sound, and very maneuverable, and unfortunately carries very little of armament, little bit of guns or missiles, and therefore the handicap. Well, it was built for that purpose, to be able to carry two missiles and guns and intercept an aircraft before it comes to the target and fire. And where you've not even seen the likes of an aircraft in front of you because you fire on radar picture. You see, so it is a good aircraft, fast aircraft, but maybe not too suitable in these days when there are so many types of avionics and systems where you have to be encountered with. You see, so we are into the fifth generation stage right now, and MiG 21, of course, needs to be uh, replaced because it's a beautiful aircraft, fantastic fly, but no teeth, not enough, at least.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you tell us about your VSM, sir. Where were you awarded the VSM for which tenure of yours, sir?
Well, when I was in the flying instructor school as an instructor, I was asked to come down to HAL, attached to HAL in Bangalore, to do the trials on the Kiran aircraft. And there are three prototype aircraft with HAL. They are not come into the Indian Air Force as yet. So my mandate was to check out the aircraft and suitability for it as a trainer. I did all the trials for the trainer as a to utilize the aircraft for training purposes and going through all the profiles that is normally taught and what is characteristics while doing the different profiles. You see,
Yes, sir.
and during the trials, I found out one of the aircraft, a rogue aircraft, was giving trouble during the stall and recovery when you go down to the minimum speed and the aircraft goes out of control when you go below that speed. And if you don't rectify it, it goes into a spin. During the stall and recovery, when you gave the power back to the engine in this case, in this particular aircraft, which had a Viper engine, you see, would stall and, and the engine temperatures would shoot up very rapidly. So I had no choice but to switch off the engine at 20,000 feet. And thereafter, I did a forced landing without an engine. HL was not perturbed at all, one bit, because I must have seen a lot of emergencies being operated over the airfield, being a test area for different types of aircraft. Of course, I consulted with the uh, test pilots, uh, s- uh, Group Captain Ranjan Das, a famous chess pilot, and he permitted uh, Chu Tilak, wing commander, to fly with me. And we noticed that this particular aircraft was giving trouble. So this aircraft was removed from the prototype line. And when I finished the task, I was asked to take over the first aircraft, Kiran aircraft, for the Indian Air Force. I went over to HAL, asked them where is the new aircraft for the Indian Air Force, for I have to do the test flight. So they said, sorry, sir, the new aircraft, we're supposed to give it to the Indian Air Force, is on the jigs. I said, how do you expect me to take over an aircraft which is on the jigs? So I got an order from the top. Doesn't matter, you take over the aircraft. So maybe I had no choice. I followed the orders. I took over the aircraft, which was still being manufactured, and it did come into the service because I was not penalized. So I was happy there. And after all the testing and gone through these uh, uh, all test flights for having force landed the Kiran aircraft twice, I was awarded the VSM.
Wow, that's so inspiring to hear, sir. So just about 2 weeks back, I had the honor to visit Admiral Raja Menon and Mrs. Anjali Menon, two illustrious old Lawrencians from our school, in fact, and we discussed you. In fact, we spoke over there, and I would be sending this conversation of ours to there as well. So, tell me one thing: would it be fair to say that you perhaps would be the senior most old Laurentians on this planet, or do you know anyone right now who's more senior to you from our school, sir?
Well, I don't see anyone senior to me because I'm already touching 87. And most of the kids who were in class with me were all whites. So they must have gone back and they may be living in Australia, UK, etc. You see? And I'm not in touch with them, of course. So when I landed up in Lovedale last year, I found myself as to be the seniormost and the oldest who's been there. So that added a little aura to myself to be able to find myself as the senior-most person in Lovedale as of now.
Sir,
See,
sir,
it
really,
was
it's been,
enjoyable.
sir, sir, it's been so
Yeah,
enjoyable
it was a-
to sir, to meet you and to be in this conversation with you, sir. Sir, before I know I have to honor your age, you told me, I mean, but before we let you go, sir, I'm very intrigued to know any message you would like to send out to our Lawrence School Lovedale community through this platform, though, because you never know where, which frequency, which universe catches on. So a lot of youngsters, a lot of people, a lot of parents would get inspired and they would want to send their children to Lovedale. A lot of children, parents, their children would have studied there. A lot of old Laurentians would have come out from there. So, especially to the Laurentian community, I'm being slightly biased over here, ladies and gentlemen. Please pardon me, but I can't help it. Someone super senior from my school, and I'm very proud of having a senior like sir. So, any message for the Lawrence School community per se, sir?
yes, yes, indeed. To all the parents in India wanting to send their kids naturally to the best available school, there cannot be anything better than school life. It's fantastic and unbelievable training that you get. You see, more important than not, it's a school where the character building takes place at that time when you are a little kid, and that carries on throughout your life. And that the motto "never given" certainly has played very big part in my life. I never give in. No matter how many times you fall, you get up and move forward. An attribute which can only develop having been to the school. And when you meet another Laurentians, you brighten up and see I'm part of this fantastic phenomenon school which built me and my character and my righteousness, etc., and put me to this place where I enjoyed every bit of my life with responsibility and patriotism. Yes, indeed.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Our school motto, ladies and gentlemen, is never give in. Sir, on that, if you permit me, I would like to recite a small little poem and I'll conclude with that, sir, if you would permit me, sir.
Please,
It's not to
please
do.
do that, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. It was not there in the Lawrence School hymn books or anywhere, but it's a poem which is very popular worldwide. It says, "Don't quit. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you are trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but have to sigh, when care's pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, and all of us sometimes learn. And many a person turns about when he might have won, had he stuck it out. So don't quit. Though the pace seems slow, you may win with another blow. Often a struggler's given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late when the night came down how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint in the clouds of doubt. And you never can tell how close you are. It might be near when it seems afar. So stick to the fight when you're hardest hit. It's when things seem worst. You must not quit. So, so this was never given again to put it together with that. So thank you very much for your time, sir. Really, truly loved it. And I see that you are holding the phone for the last 46 minutes. It is commendable. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Jan, sir. Never given, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm still fit and can even run 1 mile with you if you challenge me.
Oh, of course, sir. Of course.
All the very
No doubt
best
about that,
to
sir.
all the
No doubt.
Lawrencians.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks, sir. This is ending the broadcast.